Hi everyone. Okay, this section is all about moral development. So before I give all the slides to you, think for a moment. What if somebody came up with you with a copy of this year's AP psychology exam? Would you take a peek? Let's say you're guaranteed not to get caught. Would you cheat? Well, I'm not really interested in your answer of whether or not you would cheat, but I'm really interested in how you came to your decision. This is the study of morality. And Lawrence Kohlberg came up with the idea that the reasoning behind our morality changed throughout our lifetime. And yes, this is another stage theorist. So here's another example. As residents of New Orleans were trying to deal with the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, the victims were faced with a moral dilemma. Should they help themselves to household necessities? Should they steal things from a store because they need them? Now, their reasoning, not necessarily their answer, but their reasoning, so how they came about their answer, likely reflected different levels of moral thinking, even if they behaved similarly. And this stage theory, remember, comes from Kohlberg. So here are the three stages. Now, to come up with this stage theory, Kohlberg posed a bunch of moral dilemmas, and then he evaluated and analyzed their people's answers and their reasoning behind their answer. So read through these different stages. You're probably going to have a few questions on the quiz about them. So Kohlberg claimed these levels form a moral ladder. As with all stage theories, the sequence is unvarying. We begin on the bottom rung and ascend to the higher heights. So think about cheating. Is it ever okay to cheat in school? How do you define cheating anyway? And your answer to that question, not just what is cheating, but the way you reason through that answer, that's what Kohlberg is getting at. So let's dig into these three stages. Our pre-conventional morality, morality based on rewards and punishments. If you're rewarded for whatever it is, then it's okay, and if you're punished, the act must be wrong. Generally speaking, this is before the age of 9. Then we have conventional morality. So morality is looked at based on how others see you. If your peers or society thinks it's wrong, then so do you. So generally this is by early adolescence, and morality focuses on caring for others and on upholding laws and social rules, simply because they're the laws and the rules. Finally, we have post-conventional morality. This is based on self-defined ethical principles, so your own personal set of ethics. Just as with the other theorists, there's criticisms of Kohlberg. So I'm going to tell you about one of Kohlberg's examples. This is called the Heinz example, and it really has nothing to do with ketchup. Here's his example. We would call this the Heinz dilemma. In Europe, a woman was near death from cancer. One drug might save her, a form of radium that a druggist in the same town had recently discovered. The druggist was charging $2,000, 10 times what the drug had cost him to make. The sick woman's husband, Heinz, went to everyone he knew to borrow the money, but he could get together only about half of what it should cost. He told the druggist that his wife was dying and asked him to sell it cheaper or to let him pay later, but the druggist said no. The husband got desperate and broke into the man's store to steal the drug for his wife. Should the husband have done that, and why? I want you to think about that example because we're going to talk about it in class tomorrow. So Kohlberg used this dilemma to determine where people are at according to his stages of morality. And he asked people of different ages to read this, and then the explanation of why is really what he was looking at. Well, Carol Gilligan pointed out that he only tested boys. Do you think girls would reason differently? Or what if he flipped the gender on that story and it was a man near death from cancer and his wife was looking for the drug? Would that make a difference? Some research has suggested that boys tend to have more absolute value of morality. And girls tend to look at situational factors. Another criticism is the variation in culture. Research does confirm that children in various cultures progress from Kohlberg's pre-convention level into his conventional level. However, the post-conventional level is more controversial. It appears that if you're in a Western society and middle class, so Europe, North America, and you're well educated, these societies prize this concept of individualism. Maybe you remember that from the personality unit. So they give priority to one's own goals rather than to group goals. Here's that slide again on post-conventional morality. Now, critics contend that Kohlberg's theory is biased against the moral reasoning of members of collectivist societies like China and India, and people's thinking about real-world moral choices also engages their emotions, and moral feelings don't necessarily fit into Kohlberg's need stages. So your emotions might push you to feel differently, and there might really be a distinction between emotions and morality. Kohlberg seemed to describe morality as like this stage that you are in, and you don't go back. But in reality, depending on the emotional pull, we might move back and forth from stage to stage. Here's a clear explanation from your textbook about that moral feeling versus moral thinking. So let me describe the difference to you. Imagine you see a runaway trolley headed for 5 people. All will certainly be killed unless you throw a switch that diverts the trolley onto another track, where it will kill 1 person. Should you throw the switch? Now, most of us, given that situation, would say yes, kill 1, save 5. Now imagine the same dilemma, except that your opportunity to save the 5 requires you to push a large stranger onto the tracks where he will die as his body stops the trolley. What do you think? Now the logic is exactly the same, but for this one, most will say no. Why? Well, researchers used brain imaging to look at people's brains while they were answering this question. And actually, only with that second situation, when given the body pushing type of moral dilemma, their brain's emotion areas lit up. Now, despite the same kind of logic, that once that dilemma turned personal, the emotions were engaged and that altered this moral judgment. So moral judgment is more than just thinking, it's also this gut level feeling. And then we have this concept called moral action. Moral action involves doing the right thing. So people engaged in doing the right thing develop empathy for others and the self-discipline to resist their own impulses. Now, research in this area is asking the question, how is it that ordinary moral people could be corrupt and do horrible things? The perfect example would be the Nazi concentration camps during World War II. These concentration camp guards, these German soldiers, were, you could say many of them were ordinary moral people, yet they did horrible things. Moral action feeds the moral attitudes.